Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for joining this very late today. I'm sure you had other plans as well, so hope you find this of interest. So my name is Araceli. I'm technical manager for floating wind in Corio. During this presentation, I want to give, first of all, an introduction of Corio in the offshore wind space, and also then I want to make a little bit of a discussion around what are the opportunities that are brought to the industry from the floating wind perspective. Indeed, the key purpose of the presentation is to make a reflection and trying to see the industry not only on the negative side of things, that we're always thinking about the challenges, but the point is trying to think about the opportunities that we are already seeing today, and also the new opportunities that we think and we were also seeing that will be developing in the industry on floating wind. So some words of Corio, if this works. Yeah. So Corio is one of the world's largest offshore wind developers today. Some key figures are in terms of project pipeline. Today we have 30 gigawatts of projects in different stages up to development, covering both bottom fixed and floating wind. In terms of people, we are quite a small organization. Today we are above almost 300 people, covering different people across the industry, industrial, financial development, and asset management experts. We are a global developer, so we are established in several countries across the globe. So we are covering different regions in Europe, APAC, Americas, and other new markets as well. Even if the name of Corio can sound a little bit new to some people, because it was recently created back in April 2022, so the company is almost, more than 1 year ago now. It is important to recognize the origin of Corio. So in this slide, you can see some key areas of what is the real origin of Corio. So originally, the main entity was the Green Investment Bank that was acquired by Macquarie, and then it turned into the Green Investment Group. And then in 2022, as I was saying, the Green Investment Group started creating dedicated company portfolios operating on a standalone basis, and here is where Corio was created. So sometimes it's also difficult to understand what are the differences between the Green Investment Group and Corio, and in this case, just to highlight that we are a full developer, so apart from all the previous financial entity that we had before, right now we are developing projects since the earlier stages. Where we are in bottom fixed and floating. So here you can see some countries where we are active. So we, as I was saying before, we are in Europe, Sweden, Norway, UK, Ireland, France, and then we're also involved in Asia Pacific. So we have projects in South Korea, Japan, Taiwan. Indeed, Taiwan is one of the clear examples that show that Corio is able to start a new market, as we were the beginners of floating, of offshore, of bottom fix in Taiwan with our projects. And then we're also active in Australia and Brazil. It is important to note our investment partners. Corio has access to capital to support development and construction phases. So here I highlight two main activities. We signed last year an agreement with the Ontario's Teachers Pension Plan in order to have access to long-term capital, and similar to the access to Macquarie managed funds. So here we are directly connected to Macquarie, and this is one of the key potentials of Corio and this long-term access to capital. Some words about Corio. There are some developers that are only active on bottom fix. There are others active only on floating wind. Here in Corio, we are active in both because for Corio, it's not only about bottom fix versus floating, but it is bottom fix and floating. We see floating wind sometimes as the only option in, for example, some countries that it is not possible to develop a bottom fix because of the site conditions limitations, but we also see floating wind as a complementary topic to bottom fix. Some words on the pipeline that we have on floating wind. So before I was mentioning that today Corio has a project pipeline of around 30 gigawatts, of which today 3.5 gigawatts are confirmed. Some of the projects we are developing, we have 1.5 gigawatts in South Korea, which is the Bada Energy portfolio. And here we're actively working in the first project that will be the Grey Wall Ferry project. Then we have other areas that we are now working and bidding for. This includes France, so we have EO5, we have EO6. We're also active in Norway. We are active in the Celtic Sea. And then we have recently announced as well a partnership in Portugal, because we are going to bid for that one, and we are also active in Spain. So, what do we see as the major industry opportunities? So, I'm sure that all of these topics are already familiar to you. You might be tired of listening to those, but for us, floating wind is pretty much develop around the supply chain and infrastructure. Floating wind needs a new human task force, and then we also see that floating winds need to be sustainable, and everything we do here needs to come with a strong piece of sustainability. So the question is, how can we work together to build around all of these opportunities? So, for example, I want to make a reflection on what are the new opportunities of the supply chain and the infrastructure. So, one of the key considerations that we're seeing when we're bidding on different projects across the globe, and also when we are developing projects, is that we have the need of developing local content in the different areas, and it is not always about everything, that everything needs to be local content, but there are always developments of that, and this also includes areas that maybe were not developed before, that were established in poorer regions without access to a lot of commercial activities. And here we're finding that thanks to floating wind, new developments are being developed and are enriching some of the areas already. Then the next question is around investment. This is the key question, but the answer is that yes, both public entities and private entities are willing to invest for realizing floating wind. We are seeing a lot of push from the government, and we are already seeing how many different entities from the private sector are also interested in financing all of these projects. Then the next question is always around the chicken and the egg. The reality is that in a new market, the question is who is taking the first step, but this will be solved when we start realizing the projects, and we will be seeing this convergence that we are all a little bit skeptical about today closing when we start developing and building. Then something that is very important to see is that thanks to floating wind, we're able to support the transition from oil and gas to renewables, building on everything that already exists. So we're seeing how major oil and gas players are going through the transitions of renewables, how new vessels are being used for floating wind activities, and many others. So thanks to the development of floating wind around these maritime areas, we will be able to still be using all of the existing capabilities. a message that is something important as well is that it's not only about creation, but also about adaptation and adjustment, because it is not about starting everything from scratch, but being able to repurpose existing the capabilities and capacities. And then the last key piece is around ports. We know that for both bottom fixed and floating wind, we need to have major and sometimes massive infrastructures. And this is something that if we think about back in the history, thanks to the development of ports, we have been able to bring commercial activities to the different regions. And thanks to floating wind, many ports that were not developed before, ports that were not enough developed, will be rebuilt and in the end will be used for purposes of floating wind, but also will be able to bring new commercial activities to different regions that will help a lot to enrich the different sectors. The next point that we are seeing, and it's very relevant, is that floating wind is creating a new human task force. I think that we are all aware of how people are being converted from oil and gas to floating wind, or from bottom fixed to floating. And in the end, this is creating a lot of works and jobs, which is very good, because thanks to this, we will be able to keep having high rates of employment, which will be very helpful. Then we also see the need for building competent and extensive education around the development of floating wind. This is a very complex environment, and we need to have the people that is ready for developing it. So here we see a lot of involvement with universities, with educational centers of different degrees, and so on. And then I would say that the key consideration of this one is also that floating wind will be creating new jobs, but not only on the short term during the fabrication phase, but we think that this will be bringing a lot of long-term capacities and jobs creations, because these projects will be established and designed for last more than 30 years, and this will establish the need for operation and maintenance activities, new dedicated companies, new ports infrastructures, and this will be given the possibility of new countries of developing these activities. And then the last point, or where do we see the possibility and the opportunity in floating wind, is sustainability. So the main point here is that floating wind is new, and being such a nascent industry, we see that we have the opportunity of doing things differently. So we have the opportunity of building in different ways. We are already seeing new materials that have high recycling capacities, activities that can be developed with a reduced carbon footprint, zero emission vessels as an example as well. And then something that maybe didn't have such a strong focus before was how to develop these projects, combining the development of the projects with the environment, really. So here we're seeing that thanks to a strong push from several environmental departments, all of these projects can be developed with a strong focus on coexistence plans. So thinking about biodiversity, thinking about marine life, thinking about how to maintain a sustainable marine conditions, sustainable activities as well with the fishermen. We're seeing today in some of the ongoing projects that these activities are being developed, and we think that this will help a lot as well on the next developments, because today still building these projects in the sea can bring many challenges from the different stakeholders. So yeah, I think that this is all from my side. I think that the key message is to have a positive thinking about the opportunities that can be brought by floating wind and not only about the challenges that we might be a little bit of tired of listening to. So thank you.